Chapter 17. Dr. Range. "You're a doctor?" "Of sorts." Xander laughed a little. "You really don't strike me as the doctor type." "I know, my magazines are new." Xander didn't get the joke in time to join Range in a roar of laughter. Instead, he smiled and followed him into his office. The night before, Marcus, looking livelier than he had in the past few days, had explained that before the ceremony, Xander would first have to meet with Dr. Range. "Oh, and Xander," Marcus had called as he'd gone to leave. "I got some time off coming my way in a few days, and I'm hoping to be out of town for a week. I should be coming back sometime after the ceremony, but don't be surprised if I miss a day of your new life before we start your training." Xander had found the idea of vampires taking vacations a humorous one, but had, nonetheless, thanked his mentor and gone to bed. The next morning, a handwritten note was delivered to him with information on when and where to meet with the vampire doctor. Range led him into a room that was lit with the combustion of several reading lamps mounted on a dirty desk, a well-dated lava lamp, and a series of lights attached to a dust-coated ceiling fan. As he took in the rest of the office, Xander noticed that the interior seemed more subtle for a historian of some kind, rather than a physician, even if he was only a physician of sorts. Questioning the office decor, however, seemed foolish given the appearance of the doctor himself. Where he recalled the stereotypical white coat with salt-and-peppered-haired Caucasian man in his late 40s that seemed to fit the mold for all who practiced medicine, Xander was face to face with a tall, lean black vampire with large brown eyes and an eerie yet captivating smile. A pair of green flip-flops and a casual Hawaiian-style shirt over khaki shorts only distanced him even further from the cliché. Xander took a seat in an artsy blue chair that Range motioned to and was startled by the amount of give the cushioned seat gave. Range, smiling at Xander's surprise, navigated around the desk to his own seat and plopped down. "Striker's kid in my office," Range said, shaking his head in disbelief. "Truly an honor, I must say." "I've been hearing that sort of thing a lot." Range leaned back in his seat. "I'm not surprised. Your father was a good friend to most in this clan, myself included. You're almost like family to us. Anyway," a clap of his hands brought emphasis to the subject change. "Let's get to business." "And business would be, what do you know about vampires already?" Life eaters? I know that I see you've been talking to Sophie," Range said with a laugh. Xander blushed. "Yeah, that I'm sure you know a lot about how aurics work and such. What about Sansuigas?" Xander shrugged. "I know that they drink blood." Range laughed again. "That's hardly a start." He reached into his desk and stood up, revealing 3 small, empty cylinders, an elastic strip, and a small white pouch. Maneuvering around the desk, he stepped beside Xander and tore open the pouch and removed something small and shiny. "I know you're going to hate me for this, but it's procedure." "What is?" Xander asked. "I have to take some blood," Range answered. Xander relaxed a little. "That's it?" Range, looking skeptical, shrugged. "Most aren't as comfortable with the idea." "People are too afraid to bleed," Xander smirked. Range laughed. "Too true." The small and shiny something turned out to be a needle. Range, holding this in one hand, secured the elastic around Xander's left arm with the other and tapped below the inside of his elbow until he'd found a suitable vein, the doctor's lip twitching as he did. Then Xander watched as he slid the tip of the needle under his skin and felt a slight pinch as the vein was pierced. For a moment, Xander felt nothing as if the momentary pinch from the needle had vanished. But then Range attached one of the 3 empty cylinders to the opposite end of the needle, and the airtight vacuum began to draw blood. There was a slight tickle, and Xander watched the red fluid begin to fill the container. When it was almost full, Range replaced it with another, and then the last one when that too had become filled. When it was done, Range took the 3 vials of blood and started to label them. "So, what's all the blood for?" Xander asked. Range smirked. "I missed lunch." Xander's eyes widened. Range laughed and shook his head as he sat down again. "I'm just messing with you. It's a standard procedure for any who are going to be turned. ID, Social Security, and mother's milk." Xander stared at him for a moment. "You don't seriously expect me to understand what you meant, do you?" "No, but it's fun to watch the human initiates squirm with confusion when I say it," Rain said with another laugh. "Whenever the clan takes a human as a member, which is rare, they create files of that person before they're changed. One of these," Range held up a vial, "will be stored and recognized as your human blood before you were changed. Another will confirm that you are who you were in the event that such need arises. And the third is going to be your first meal when you've completed the change. Like I said, ID, Social Security, and mother's milk." "You think that one up all by yourself?" Xander asked with a grin. "Actually, I have a team of writers." Range let out another laugh before putting the 3 vials in a small refrigerator behind his desk. Xander leaned forward when the laughter had calmed down. "You were going to tell me more about Squiers?" Range nodded. "Yes, I was. I believe that if you're going to be turned, it's important to know what it is that you're getting yourself into." He grinned at Xander. "In this case, a little more than what we consume to survive." Xander felt his face redden again, and he nodded. "Blood supplies nourishment for a Squier, not simply through the fluid itself, but also through the life force that it contains." As Range explained this, he turned away and opened a drawer in a cabinet behind him and pulled out a squealing rat by the tail. "As you already know, like any other animal, this creature has blood coursing through its veins. It is real, it is physical, and," he licked his lips, "it is tangible. However," he gave the rat a gentle shake by the tail, eliciting a series of panicked squeaks. "If we were to consult an auric, one who can see the energies that living things give off, they would tell us of what else was coursing through the veins along with the blood." He looked up. "You met Sensei yet?" Xander nodded. Range laughed. "Yeah, he's a strange one too. Always ranting about the fact that the Japanese word for blood is chi, and—" "You speak Japanese?" Xander shook his head. Range nodded. "Yeah, I tried to learn once, but it was too hard. Anyway, he's always pointing out that the Japanese word for blood and energy are the same." Xander nodded. "Chi, right?" Range smirked. "So he did mention it." "He said something about chi. I put the rest together," Xander shrugged. Range nodded and eyed the rat for a moment before putting it back, muttering about manners. When he spun back around, he rested his hands on his desk. "Well, as crazy as it seems, he's got a point." He looked sternly at Xander. "Squiers do not just drink blood. They drink a being's life essence. That, more than anything, is what sustains us. Anyway, since you're going to be one of us, I figured you might also want to know about what to be careful of and what to be ready for." Xander nodded. "All right." Range smiled. "Okay. The popular myths have some truth, though most of them are bullshit," he chuckled. "Sunlight has always been one of my favorites. When you are changed, you will not melt or explode if exposed. However, your skin will become sensitive to heat energy. You see, Senswigas are so well built for being predators that even our flesh is ready for the hunt, each cell taking in information from the air around it, looking for changes in heat to signify if an area is inhabited by potential prey. Because a Sang's skin is so highly prepared for trace amounts of heat radiation, the rays from the sun actually overload the cells and begins to destroy them. The effect is that you end up with a very bad sunburn after about an hour. Your skin blisters with second-degree burns after 2 or 3, and by hours 4 or 5, he shook his head. Xander nodded. So sunlight does kill you. Oh, sweet Jesus, yes! I just said it wouldn't melt or ignite you. What about Oryx? What about them? Xander frowned. Do Oryx react the same way to the sun as Sangs? Range nodded. Despite the obvious differences, all vampires have descended from the same primary species. Oryx are, like us, unable to tolerate sunlight for very long. Range jumped back into the previous topic. Next myth, garlic. The myth says that vampires are allergic to the stuff, but really I just think they were talking about the vampire's girlfriend. Xander stared at him. Range chewed his lip and cleared his throat. Yeah, I know, that one sucked. Anyway, garlic, despite all myths behind it, is an anticoagulant. That means that it helps keep blood flowing smoothly and keeps it from clotting. It's for this reason that it's actually better for a Sanswiga to consume garlic in some form. You see, because Sangs can't usually feed on a set schedule, and many times the blood running in their veins is several days old, it's not uncommon for it to clot, and you can't expect the heart to pump blood when it's all scabbed up. He smiled. It actually provides extra mileage, so to speak. Xander cocked his head, curious by these new facts, but nodded nonetheless. Once you've been changed, it's important to keep feeding. However, you will still be able to eat and drink normal foods like a regular human, but none of that will give you the energy you need to stay alive. Your body will break it down, but your new system will have nothing to do with the components, and you'll expel them. A lot of us stop eating regular food altogether after we're changed. Others just incorporate blood into their meals, be it blood mixed with their food or simply as a side. Range took a deep breath, then, moving right along, turning into a bat or wolf or whatever, can't happen. Flight, forget about it. Hypnosis, unless you're half auric, don't hold your breath. Crosses, only as powerful as the person wielding them, which, most of the time, amounts to jack and shit. Silver, well, that myth started from the belief that the substance fights infection. Problem is, the vampire gene isn't an infection. It's more of a cure. Are vampires really dead? Xander blurted, not seeing that particular myth coming into the spotlight anytime soon. Range laughed again. Nothing that feeds is dead. It's actually the other way around. Eating is what keeps it from dying. The human body must die to allow the mutation to take place, but when the transformation is complete, the system jumpstarts and new life begins. Hearing the answer reminded Xander of one of the more pressing questions he'd been contemplating. And how will I be changed? Range nodded. That is the biggest question. The ceremony will take place in 2 days at midnight. He grinned. Xander raised an eyebrow. Is it always performed on the initiate's birthday? Range shook his head. No, it just happened to work out that way. When the time comes, you will stand before Dapok as he reads the initiation to you, and you will meet the pureblood who will bite you. Pureblood? Xander asked. Range nodded. Only a born Sang has the right glands to produce the mutagen that is responsible for the change. Mutagen? Another nod. The fang of a Sangsuiga vampire is hollow, like a snake's, and contains a combination of toxins, which puts the victim into a state of paralysis during feeding. A hormone to stimulate a healing process in the victim. Xander leaned forward, becoming more and more intrigued. Healing? Evolution seemed to have given us a nifty little way of hiding our feeding habits. A human who is fed off of will only show the puncture wounds briefly before a hyperactive healing process is activated from the hormones and the bites heal over completely with the remaining life the victim has. Without the puncture wounds at the site of the bite, whoever finds the body would figure they had just died of natural causes. Xander frowned. But those who are made don't have any of those abilities? Rain shook his head. The change doesn't hollow out the teeth or completely form the glands. So they can't change a victim then, can they? Rain shivered at that, shaking his head. Oh, they can. The mutagen of a made sang doesn't allow for a complete transformation. The victims of their bites make haphazard changes and come out of the process as insatiable monsters. These third-generation sangs are commonly referred to as freaks. Xander did his best to fake a laugh, assuming it was another one of the doctor's jokes. Range frowned. I'm serious, Striker. Those things are not to be taken lightly. They'll feed on you as quick as they'll feed on a human, and that sort of mindless killing results in secrets that have been kept for thousands of years being spilled. Any maid sang caught making those things on purpose is hunted down and exterminated, no questions asked. So anytime you feed, be sure to break their necks or take off their heads to make sure they won't be coming back. Xander, still feeling foolish for laughing, cocked his head. A broken neck stops the change? Rain shrugged. Can't start a new life without an intact nervous system. Xander nodded, chewing his lip through the awkward silence that followed for a moment. Anyway, he forced himself to sound upbeat as he changed the subject. About the ceremony, you were saying I would meet my pureblood? That's correct, Range nodded. At that point, you will be bitten within the chambers of the changing hole. Xander couldn't help but laugh. Range rolled his eyes. Yes, I know. Whoever was making up names that day was having an off moment. Afterwards, you will die, pause for dramatic gasp, and for 3 days, your body will undergo a complex metamorphosis. Xander ran a tongue along his upper jaw. So I'm going to come out of all of this with fangs too? Absolutely, Range nodded, excited by his own answer. Part of the change is the losing of your human canines. This will happen soon after you're bitten. From there, a complex hollow bone pocket will form in the gums to sheathe your new fangs. He peeled back his upper lip and rubbed a bulged area in his gums right above his elongated fangs. This allows them to extend and retract, while also providing enough rigidity to keep them from snapping out when you bite something. Again, Xander's tongue probed his upper jaw, caressing both of his canines before he nodded again. When the 3 days are up, you will awaken and feed for the first time. He motioned towards the refrigerator behind him that contained the vials of blood, and you will emerge as your new self and be greeted by the clan as one of us. Xander smiled. The idea that he would finally be accepted was a euphoric and long-since abandoned hope that was becoming all so real for him. Then what? Rain shrugged. Striker's offspring is already the thing of legends. Once you've been changed and are part of the Odin clan, he let out a long breath. Well, after that, we're treading in new waters. How so? Xander asked with a frown. Xander, Range's tone became cold and serious. There are already plenty out to kill you. Once it becomes known that you've been initiated, there's no telling what will happen.